enough to get it everywhere it needs to go. Because the next fact I'm going to give you is that the human body has an estimated 60,000 miles with the blood vessels. That's why your heart has to pump so hard. It's got 60,000 miles to pump through. 60,000 miles. To give you a little glimpse of what that is the Earth, the diameter of the Earth is 25,000 miles. If you took the blood vessels in your body and you lined them up end to end, you could go around the Earth more than 2 times. I've driven across Texas. That's a long way. That's a lot of blood vessels in your body, but God created you that way. He knew what it was going to take to supply every area of your body. Human fact number 6 is your left lung is smaller than your right lung to make room for your what? Heart. You can't tell somebody your lungs must be the same size. That would mean they didn't have a heart. All they have is to do. You can't call somebody heartless. Everybody, your right lung has 3 little spots in it, and your left lung only has 2. Why? God created us that way. He knew we were going to need that heart right there in the perfect spot. He gave us 2 of them, and they don't look like a butterfly. They don't perfectly match. This one's a little small. Okay? Everybody got that? All right. All you grumpy people out there that won't laugh at my jokes. It takes 17 muscles to smile and 43 muscles to frown. And most of y'all on Sunday are very exhausted from working out your frowns when y'all leave here. Those 43 muscles of you going, boo, preacher, I'm not having a joke. It takes 43 muscles to do that. So, smile and laugh at my jokes and you will be more refreshed when you leave church. Number 8. Every one of your tongue prints is unique, just like your fingerprints. So everybody stick out your tongue and show somebody. You're not sticking your tongue out. Stick out your tongue and show somebody. Say, that's my thumbprint right here. Right there. That's my tongue print. God gave every one of us unique fingerprints, unique tongue print. You know that I did read that if your tongue is pink, that it's clean. If it has like a white film on it, like mine probably does, it has a layer of bacteria. Okay? So those of you, you might want to tell your neighbor if their tongue is white. Alright, number 9. Human. And some of y'all are going to get so upset with me at this, but I didn't create y'all. God did it. And you can go with Him, not me. Y'all are going to be upset about this, but humans are the only creature to create tears because of emotion. As much as y'all think your dog loves you, when you leave, it's probably your nasty perfume you spray that causes an allergic reaction and makes their eyes cry. Right? Right? See, when I read this, I was mildly disappointed because a friend of ours, he has some bucking bulls right over here, and he couldn't find anybody to get on him, and I used to be an old Toro twister, so I thought I'd get on him. And I went to get on him the first time, and he started crying. I thought, man, he knew he's in trouble now. He's scared of me. But it must have been the dirt, I guess. That's funny. Alright. This one here, I've used it in going through Peter, and I've used it time and time again, and this is the most amazing fact to me. And it says that the average person loses 60 to 100 strands of hair a day. Some of y'all wear a hat to cover up. Your 100 ain't come back yet. Whether you have lots of hair, very little hair, the average person loses 60 to 100 hairs a day. And you know, the Bible says in Matthew 10:30 that God says the very hairs on your head are numbered. And God cares about us so much when He created us that every hair on your head has a number. And when you lose those 60 to 100 a day, God cares so much about you. He can tell you what numbers hairs you lost that day. Isn't that amazing how much He loves us? How much He cares for us? The care He took in creating us? That every time something as insignificant as losing a hair, you thought the dog hair was bad. There's human hair that you're losing. And every one of those, God knows. That's the detail He went to when He created us. There's all kinds of facts about your human body. Those are just 10. But what I want want you to know is that God did create each and every one of us unique and individual. We are. But we all have His attributes because we were all created in whose image? In His. So as unique and individual as we may seem, we have some attributes that are the same. And they're the very attributes of God. And we'll get into next week of why some of us don't have as many of them as we used to. All these attributes are born into us, but because sin entered the world, they're not as prevalent today as they were when God created the first man and first woman. We'll get into that next week. But I want you to know that some of us have the very attributes of God. And so, in verse 26, God allowed us to rule over all creation. God gave us the attribute. In Psalm 8, I'm going to read, you don't have to flip there. But in Psalm 8, verses 5 and 6, we read verses 3 and 4 last week. This week, 5 and 6 says, God made him a little lower than God, and you crown him with glory and majesty. You make him rule over the works of your hands, and you have put all things under his feet. That's every human. God created us to rule over his creation. Every one of us was given that. Now some of you, your wives, have taken some of your rule away, right? She tells you what you get to have rule over. That's a joke. That's funny. That's funny right there. I wear the pants in my family. She picks them out, I put them on. Right? God made us to rule over. Don't have your husband in church. He's already defeated enough by that fact. Alright? God created us to rule over all. Every one of us are to rule over his creation. That's not my job. I don't have this special ability to get to rule over God's creation. That's not what I get to do. He created every one of you that way. You were created in his image with the ability to rule over all his creation. And 1 Timothy 6:17 says, God created everything for our enjoyment. And he says, instruct those who are rich in this present world not to be conceited or to fix their hope on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who richly supplies us with all things to enjoy. Everything God has blessed you with, he's given to you for your enjoyment. That's how much he loves us. And as much as we're different, as much as we all have our own unique qualities and attributes, he gave everybody that right to rule over all of his creation. He gave everybody that right to enjoy everything he blesses you with. Do you enjoy all that God blessed you with? If you're not, you're robbing yourself, because God gives it to you so you will enjoy it. And so we don't fix our eyes on the things that we don't have. We don't fix our eyes on the uncertainty of earthly riches. We fix our eyes on everything God has blessed us with, and we enjoy that. Because it's obvious when you look around, some of us have been blessed with more, and we have more to enjoy than others. But God gives us everything that we need so that we can enjoy it. So whether you have a little or you have a lot, it was a gift of God's, and it's yours to enjoy. That's good preaching. I don't care if you like it or not. That's why God gave us all of that stuff. God gave us also some of his attributes, some of his characteristics. If you read in the New Testament book of Galatians 5, I think it starts around 22, it talks about the fruits of the Spirit. God gave us these fruits. He plants these seeds into his children. And those 9 fruits of the Spirit are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. God gives every one of us those. And some of those we're really good at, and some of those we really need to let them take root and grow in our lives. Some of us are really good at loving people, but we don't have peace about some things. Most of us are really good at one of those, and then the last one is one we can all use a little help with, and that is self-control. Controlling ourselves. Those are all God's attributes that he gave to every one of us. So don't sit here and tell me, well, I'm just not made that way. I can't do that. You were created in his image, and if God says you can do it, you can do it. So quit lying to yourself and telling yourself you can't do that. You can do everything God has called you to do. Why? Because you were created in his image, and he won't tell his creation to do something he hasn't already done, or he hasn't equipped us with the ability to do. Okay? So we're made in his image. We're made unique. And then we also were made with the same attributes that he has. And so some of you sit there, and I'm going to read this so I don't mess it up. This is funny, I wrote it. It says, great, I'm made in God's image. What can I do? After all, I'm just another number. I'm just another person. What can I do for God? If you knew all that I've done in my life, God couldn't use me. God couldn't use me, preacher. You need to be preaching this to somebody else because you don't know what I've done. You don't know what I've been. We're going to look at 3 different lives. We're going to look at how God used them. Yes, they all individually had personal strong points. They all had their own thumbprint and own fingerprint. But they all had the very attributes of God in them. And because they were created in God's image, they decided to fully follow God, even though they knew they would fail at times. And so I want you to leave here encouraged after hearing these 3 stories. The first story I want to talk to you about is in the Old Testament. There was a man named David. And David was just a boy. They called him a ruddy-faced boy. Apparently that meant you were redheaded-ish. I don't know. Ruddy-faced. If you're going to describe me, don't put ruddy-faced in front of it. That just don't sound good. Not that I don't talk about being pretty. That's fine. What did I tell you about the brown muscles? David was just a kid. And the king at the time was King Saul. And King Saul was having some issues in his own personal life. And somebody suggested, why don't you get somebody to play the harp? And so they go and they get this little boy. He's the youngest of his family. And they get David because somebody had heard him play the harp before. And this little boy who was useless in the world's eyes, God calls him out and introduces him to Saul, and he begins to play the harp for the king. I mean, that's like your kid sitting in the Oval Office playing their flute or clarinet or chord or whatever they're really good at playing. That's what David got to do. They called him, they hunted him down and said, come play for the king. This is just an ordinary boy. So he goes home, and David, what does he do? He goes home and he goes back to tending the herd just like his family was supposed to do. His older brothers are off at war with the Philistines. And his dad packs a lunch for him to take to his older brothers. David walks up on the scene of a giant Philistine challenging God's people. Challenging his older brother and the entire army. And nobody wanted to accept this giant's challenge. And so here's David, just a young teenage boy. All he's ever done is play harp for the king and tend to some sheep, right? David goes and he kills the giant. And I love the story, and if you haven't read it, it's in First Samuel there. Get in there and read it. And I mean, for a boy to stand in front of the giant and say the things David said, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to chop your head off, and I'm going to put it on a stick. I mean, he was serious. He believed God. And because he believed God, God used him. And he did take over the Philistines. Well, he ended up becoming king after Saul, the king he played the harp for. He became king. And God called David a man after his own heart. And we fast forward to this man after God's own heart, this wonderful king that God's been raising from a child, is walking around on his balcony one day and he sees a lady bathing on the roof. And he calls for a servant, and instead of looking and seeing something he didn't see, instead of walking off like they're supposed to, he looked. And he sent a servant to get the lady. The lady came, he laid with her. She became pregnant with his child. Her husband is off at war. So to cover up his sin, this king, this man after God's own heart, calls for Uriah, Bathsheba's husband, to come back from war so that he could lay with her and they could pretend that it was his kid. But guess what? Uriah was so faithful to the king and the kingdom and his army that he fought with that when he came back, he wouldn't go to his house. He says, my men and your men are sleeping out in tents in a field of battle. I will not do that. I will not go to my house and eat at my house and drink at my house and lay with my wife. I won't do those things. And so David sends a letter to the head boss man of the army that's out there. I forgot his name between now and then. Sends a letter with Uriah. his death letter. Sends it in Uriah's hand. He goes, he delivers it to his captain, whatever he is. He opens the letter. The captain opens the letter.